Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be talking all about snails.
Snails.
Exactly. We're going way beyond, your garden variety snail, though.
Right.
Really exploring some surprising facts about these creatures. I think they're often overlooked.
Definitely.
And our guide for this deep dive is going to be a YouTube video.
Good.
And it's called Snail Facts You Probably Didn't Expect.
I like it.
It's from a channel called FactsNet.
Okay, cool.
So get ready, because we're going to discover some things that you might not know
Okay.
about snails. Like, for example, did you know that some snails can have up to 20,000 teeth?
What? 20,000?
I know.
That's like crazy.
Crazy. Or that some can sleep for 3 years.
It's a long nap.
Yeah. So let's jump right in. So right off the bat, the video busts this common misconception that snails are insects.
Oh, interesting.
But they're not. They're actually mollusks, which puts them in the same category as clams and oysters,
Wow.
and even octopuses.
Oh, I did not know that.
I know, it's kind of mind-blowing. So what makes a mollusk a mollusk?
So mollusks are a really diverse group of invertebrates,
Okay.
but they share some key characteristics. They have a soft body,
Yeah?
generally a
Okay.
muscular foot,
Right.
for movement, and often a shell,
Right.
although that can vary quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty amazing to think about, like, snails and slugs.
Yeah.
They fall into the gastropod class,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually outnumber many other types of mollusks.
Really?
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
So even though we don't see them all the time, they're like a dominant force.
Kind of, yeah.
They're out there,
Yeah, in the mollusk world.
living their best life.
I love it. So the video also addresses this age-old question. What's the difference between a snail and a slug?
You know, it's the first thing people ask me at parties.
Right? It's like the big debate.
I get it all the time.
Yeah.
Well, the most obvious difference is the shell.
Yeah,
You know, snails have that external shell for protection, which slugs lack.
right.
And this has a big impact on how they move and their ability to get into, small spaces. Yeah, you don't see a slug in a shell, do you?
Not usually, no.
And what about that 99-million-year-old snail fossil
What?
that was discovered in Myanmar?
Oh, wow.
I mean, that just blows my mind, something that old.
99 million years.
Yeah, what makes this find so special?
So this discovery is really remarkable because
Mhm.
this particular fossil is not just a shell.
Right.
It actually has preserved soft tissues,
What?
like the eyes and foot.
The air.
So we can actually see
Wow.
like what a snail looked like millions of years ago.
That's incredible.
It helps us piece together how they evolved over time.
So cool. It really puts the snail's journey through time into perspective,
Yeah.
millions of years.
Deep time.
Yeah. So speaking of journeys, the video also goes into the variety of snail species out there, talking about, the differences between land snails and sea snails.
Right.
What are some of the challenges that these sea snails face, and how have they adapted?
Yeah. Sea snails have evolved these really incredible adaptations to live in the water. For example, their shells are often much more streamlined,
Okay.
just to move through the water.
Makes sense.
And their respiratory systems have adapted to get oxygen from the water.
Okay.
Some sea snails actually even have lungs, which is fascinating.
Oh, wow.
So they can survive in and out of water,
That's cool.
which is pretty cool.
It's crazy how they can adapt to such different environments, right?
Totally.
And here's a fact that surprised me. Some snail species don't have eyes.
Really?
How do they get around?
So they rely on their other senses, like touch and smell,
Okay.
to navigate their surroundings.
Makes sense.
It shows how adaptable these creatures are.
So let's zoom in on some of the unique aspects of snail anatomy.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier the radula.
The radula, yes.
Can you explain what it is and how it works?
Okay, so the radula is like a ribbon-like structure,
Uh-huh.
and it's covered in tiny teeth,
Okay.
almost like a tongue.
Right.
And snails use this to kind of scrape food off surfaces. And what's really mind-blowing is the sheer number of teeth some species have.
So you mentioned like 20,000.
Yeah, up to 20,000.
That's crazy. And of course, we can't forget about snail slime.
Oh, the slime.
Right. I always just thought of it as a sticky mess.
Yeah.
But it's got to be more than that.
Snail slime is actually really remarkable.
Okay.
It's much more than just a sticky trail. It allows them to glide over rough surfaces. It protects them from predators.
Wow.
It helps keep them hydrated.
So it's like their all-terrain vehicle.
Yeah, and a shield.
And a shield all in one.
Exactly.
So cool. And then there are those iconic snail shells.
Yeah, those shells.
What happens if a snail's shell gets broken?
Shells are essential for protecting their soft body.
Right.
But if it's completely broken, It can't be replaced.
So they're really important.
They're very important.
Yeah. The video also kind of challenges this idea that snails are always slow.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Okay, so the average snail
Yep.
might not be breaking any land speed records, but they're not as sluggish as you might think.
Okay.
They can cover a mile in about 33 hours.
Oh, wow. That's faster than I thought.
Yeah, they're moving. They're getting there.
Are there any snails that could be considered fast?
Believe it or not,
Okay.
there's a snail called the plow snail, and it's considered the speedster of the snail world.
What? How does a snail become a speedster?
Okay, so the plow snail actually uses ocean waves to propel itself forward
Oh.
by flexing its foot like a sail
What?
at just the right moment. Yeah.
That's so cool.
And they've even been observed hitching rides on other sea creatures, too,
Oh my gosh.
which is pretty funny.
That's amazing. What about this idea that a snail can actually move faster if it's following the slime trail of another snail?
That is true.
Really?
Yeah, so that existing slime trail provides extra traction,
Okay.
allowing the following snail to kind of glide more easily.
So they're paving the way for each other.
Yeah, like a little snail highway.
I love that, the snail highway. Okay, let's talk about snail reproduction.
Okay.
The video mentions that freshwater snails can reproduce asexually.
Loosexually, yeah.
What does that mean?
That means they can create offspring without a mate.
Okay.
It's a pretty remarkable adaptation.
Yeah.
Allows them to quickly populate new environments.
Okay.
But most snails reproduce sexually, and they lay a large number of eggs,
Okay.
often over 100 in a single clutch.
Wow, 100.
Yeah, it's a lot of baby snails.
What are the chances of those eggs actually surviving?
So unfortunately, the survival rate is pretty low.
Oh.
Only about 20 to 50 out of 100 will make it to adulthood.
Wow, so like half.
And even more sadly, about a third of snail mothers die after laying their eggs.
Really? Why is that?
You know, laying that many eggs takes a huge toll on the body.
Yeah.
Leads to extreme stress, loss of body mass.
Gosh.
It's a reminder that motherhood, even in the animal kingdom,
Yeah.
is a big sacrifice.
It really puts things in perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
Now let's move on to snail behavior.
Okay.
So the video mentions that garden snails are nocturnal.
Yes.
Why is that?
Being most active at night helps them avoid predators
Okay.
and conserve moisture.
It's a smart strategy.
It is.
Yeah. And speaking of conserving moisture, the video talks about snail sleep
Snail sleep, yeah.
or estivation. How does that help them survive?
So estivation is kind of like hibernation,
Okay.
a state of dormancy that allows snails to survive extreme heat or dryness.
Okay.
They seal themselves inside their shells and reduce their metabolic rate and conserve moisture.
Wow.
And what's remarkable is that snails can estivate for a really long time,
How long?
up to 3 years.
3 years. That's one long nap.
That's a serious power nap.
Yeah. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about how humans have used snails.
Okay.
The video mentions the use of their shells in various industries.
Yeah, snail shells have been used for centuries in all sorts of ways.
Really?
Yeah, like in the paper industry.
Okay.
They've been used as a filler material. And believe it or not, crushed snail shells can even be found in some face powders.
What? Really?
Yeah.
I never would have guessed that.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising.
Who knew snails were so multi-talented?
Right.
They get around?
What about the use of snail serum in skincare?
Oh, yeah.
That one was new to me.
Snail serum has actually gained a lot of popularity in recent years
Okay.
for its potential skin benefits.
Ah, interesting.
Back in the 1980s,
Eh?
they discovered that it could make skin softer and clearer.
Really?
And it may even help treat wounds and blemishes.
So snail serum facials, huh?
Snail serum facials, that's right.
That's something I never expected.
It's a thing. That's wild. Okay, let's move on to snails as pets and food.
Okay.
The video mentions that snails are becoming popular as low-maintenance pets.
They are pretty low maintenance.
What are your thoughts on this trend?
Well, I think snails are a good option for people who want a pet that's relatively easy to care for.
Yeah.
They're quiet, they don't need a lot of space,
Right.
and they're actually really fascinating to watch.
Okay, so what are the basic care requirements for keeping a snail as a pet?
For land snails, you'll need a terrarium with the right type of soil or coconut fiber.
Okay.
And sea snails, of course, need an aquarium with salt water,
Makes sense.
and you want to make sure they have a balanced diet.
Right.
Interestingly, the video recommends dried moringa leaves as a high-protein food option.
Dried moringa leaves. Okay, I've never heard of that.
It's a good source of protein for them.
On the other side of the spectrum, the video also talks about the history of snails as a food source.
Snails have been a food source for a long time,
Yeah.
especially, in times of famine when other options were scarce.
So they were a readily available source of protein and nutrients.
That's right.
We all know about escargot, but what other snail dishes are out there?
There are snail dishes all over the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's snail stew in Morocco,
Wow.
snail porridge in Nigeria,
Okay.
and even snail caviar, which is pretty fancy.
Snail caviar.
It's out there.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have.
But there's still so much more to learn about snails.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm already looking at these creatures in a whole new light.
Right. They're more than meets the eye.
Absolutely.
So we're going to take a quick pause here
Okay.
and continue our snail-tastic journey in just a moment.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of snails.
Yeah, we're having a lot of fun learning about snails.
I know, they're really fascinating little creatures.
Right. And before we pause, we were talking about the surprising variety of ways humans have utilized snails,
Yeah.
like their shells and, even snail serum facials.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of unexpected encounters with snails,
Okay.
the video mentions a snail that I don't think I'd want to meet while snorkeling.
Oh, no. What's that?
The cone snail.
The cone snail. Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about this creature?
So the cone snail, it's a beautiful snail,
Yeah,
but it's also deadly.
deadly.
It's got this venomous harpoon.
Yeah, it uses it to capture its prey.
Wow.
And its venom is so potent that it can be fatal to humans.
Oh, wow. So like deadly snail.
Deadly snails, yeah. So,
That's a good reminder to always be aware of your surroundings
right, be careful out there.
when you're in the ocean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit back to the world of less lethal snails.
Okay.
The video also talks about the relationship between snails and aquariums. Seems like it can be a little bit complicated.
Yeah, while some snails can actually be beneficial in an aquarium,
Okay.
like helping control algae,
Right.
certain species can actually become pests.
Really?
Yeah.
What makes some snail species more problematic than others in an aquarium?
So, species like the pond snail, the ram's horn snail,
Okay.
and the trumpet snail,
Mm-hmm.
they're known for their rapid reproduction rates.
Oh, okay.
And if their populations aren't carefully managed,
Yeah.
they can quickly, overpopulate,
Oh, I see.
disrupt the balance.
Makes sense.
So you need just the right amount.
Yeah, you need enough to maintain, but not so many that they just take over.
Yeah, exactly. A delicate balance.
The video reassures us, though, that most snails are pretty low maintenance pets,
Oh, for sure.
compared to other pets.
Yeah, they don't need much.
What's the best way to care for a pet snail?
Well, you need to make sure you provide them with a suitable habitat,
Okay.
like a terrarium for land snails.
Right.
Or an aquarium for sea snails.
Mm-hmm.
And a proper diet is also crucial.
Yeah, so what do they eat?
Most snails are herbivores, so they love fruits and vegetables.
Okay, makes sense.
The video really emphasizes a diet rich in protein.
Right, and you mentioned the dried moringa leaves.
Yeah, that's a great source of protein for them.
Speaking of things that are not good for snails,
Okay.
the video addresses this myth that salt is like an instant death sentence.
Right.
What really happens when salt comes into contact with a snail?
Okay, so salt is definitely harmful to snails,
Okay.
but it doesn't kill them immediately. So when salt touches the snail's slime,
Yeah.
it basically creates this very salty solution,
Okay.
and it pulls water out of their bodies.
Oh, so it dehydrates them.
Exactly, yeah, dehydration.
So it's more of a slow and painful process.
Yeah, it's not a quick death.
Yeah, that's important to know. It just reminds us that even these small creatures deserve our compassion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, the video also touches upon the historical significance of snails.
Mm-hmm.
They were a vital food source for many cultures.
Especially during times of famine.
It's interesting to think how they were actually essential.
Yeah, it's a different perspective,
Yeah.
right? Because we think of them as pests,
Yeah, exactly.
but they were, a source of protein and nutrients.
When there wasn't anything else
Exactly.
available.
Yeah.
And their culinary journey continues today, right? We talked about escargot,
Oh, yeah.
but there are all these dishes all over the world.
There are, yeah.
From snail stew to porridge.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, the variety.
And caviar.
Snail caviar. Don't forget the snail caviar.
It's amazing to think about.
Yeah, so many ways to enjoy snails.
Yeah, all the different ways that they're incorporated into cuisine around the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's a reminder that what might be considered a delicacy in one culture
Right.
could be a staple in another.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
This whole deep dive has really opened my eyes to all these different ways that humans have interacted with snails.
Yeah.